Hello, welcome to another episode of I Helped Make That. And like a few episodes previous, I'm going to talk about a hit show that until now I had never seen. Instead of Breaking Bad, though, I am going to be talking about The Wire with Ronnie Moe himself, Jarvis George. Welcome, Jarvis.
Yes. Hey, man, thank you for having me, Kevin.
You're welcome. But of course, we have to get the anchor ad out of the way.
Right.
So, Jarvis,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever wanted to create a podcast?
Funny enough, I have. I always, I have a lot of friends who say, "Hey, man, you're really knowledgeable about stuff, and you're just a great talker. You should really do a podcast." And there was always part of me that was a little hesitant. I was like, "Who wants to hear me blabber on? Acting, yeah. Sitting down and having a, fireside chat with somebody, I wasn't sure about it, but I've been thinking about it more and more."
Okay. Well, if you ever decide to create the podcast, you know what you can use? Anchor. You know why Anchor?
Why Anchor?
It's the easiest podcasting platform to use. All you do is sign up for an account, then you can record the episode, post it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those platforms.
Right on. I need something easy that I can just do myself, and I don't need a whole crew. That's cool.
Great. So, if you decide to create that podcast, try Anchor today.
All right.
All right. Now, tell me, Jarvis, what was the audition process like for The Wire?
It was pretty much your standard audition process. I was living in DC at the time. I just graduated from Howard University, HU, and there were a lot of shows being filmed in Baltimore at the time. Baltimore was kind of the go-to location for East Coast looking cities outside of New York. Anything to double as New York or what have you. So there was a casting director there named Pat Moran. She is lovely. She was a jewel. I'm not sure if she's still there or not, but I literally can trace the beginning of my career back to her. I'd worked with her on The Corner and worked with her on Homicide: Life on the Streets, or Homicide the movie. I did the made-for-TV movie, and she brought me in for The Wire. I read did a pre-read set, and for folks, I don't know if you know the process, but you do a pre-read. They want to know, can you walk, talk, chew bubble gum at the same time? And then if you're good and you don't embarrass them, they bring you back in for a producer session or a director session. And usually that's going to be the person or people who will make the decision on whether you're the guy or not. And I read for Clement Virgo, who was directing the episodes that I was going to do. And we did it, and he, gave me adjustments, which is, it seems counterintuitive, but adjustments are a good thing. Actors love them. Like, you go in, you've practiced at home, you've been in the mirror, you've been in the car, then you go in and you do your thing. And then when they go, that was great. Okay, let's give you some adjustments. And actors are like, yes, I get to be in the moment and work off of direction. And that's what they also most of the time want to see. Can you take direction, or can we nudge you in a different direction than what you had done? And that's what I did with Clement, and we worked back and forth. And then it wasn't too long after that I got the call. Television works fast. You know, you audition, and usually within a day or two, they call you and say, "What's your avail?" or "You're the choice." And I got the call, and I was the choice. And you would have thought I won the lottery. You know, I was like, "Yes, I got a role in another show." And there were rumblings at that time about The Wire, what it could be. You know, if you were in the DC Baltimore area. Of course, it hadn't premiered yet, but all the actors were talking about it as the show that you wanted to get on, because it was HBO. And at that time, you know, it was Sopranos, it was Oz, it was, you know, the HBO was known as the hub for quality creative content, stuff that could make your career. And it did. The Wire did just that for a lot of people. So it was a great experience.
Amazing. So, what then was it like filming on set?
It was, first of all, I don't know if you've ever been to Baltimore and have seen Baltimore, but if you've ever, obviously, you ever see The Corner or The Wire or shows like that, they film on location. They film in the actual neighborhoods where the story takes place, and a lot of it can be hardcore. You know, when I was doing The Corner, I was an extra, but I was one of the drug dealers, and this was back in the days of pagers and payphones. And so I had to make a phone call, and I walked off set to go make a phone call, and somebody thought I was selling drugs and tried to buy drugs from me. And I was like, "Hey, I'm an actor. I pretend for a living, you know." And they were very much like, "Oh man, cool. Keep doing your thing, man." And then they kind of moseyed on down the street. So there was very much that kind of vibe on The Wire and the set, but I never felt unsafe, which was such a collision of yes and no. You know, you're filming in this environment where obviously there's high crime and things happen, but at the same time, the people who lived in that neighborhood were like, "Nah, man, that's The Wire," you know, because they know that show has been filming there for a couple of episodes, and it's like, "Nah, you don't mess with them. They're cool. That's our folks." So that was really cool. I am a disciple of David Simon. Anything that man writes, I'm here for it, both as an actor, but also as a viewer, as a fan. And so this was my introduction to David and the worlds that he creates. And I had no clue just how expansive that world would become. But even in the episodes that I was in, you knew that this writing was top notch. It was crazy. It wasn't just, "Hey, here's a criminal, let's go shoot him in the back." It really was deep. It was depth of character. It was a lot of political intrigue. It was a lot of maneuvering. And it was really sophisticated, more than your average cops and robbers. And if anyone who's seen the series, you know that it's no character in that show is binary. You know, good, evil, black, white, no pun intended. And even characters like Omar, you know, Omar's coming was gay and had a boyfriend, but yet he's sticking people up and robbing them, but he doesn't rob regular people. He only robs people who've signed up to be in the game and be criminals. So it was a lot of sophisticated nuance that was just, you knew this was going to be great.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about the show is how, again, everyone is painted in a series of grays. Like, the cops are just as bad as the drug dealers, and the drug dealers definitely have, a lot more character to them than just, scary drug dealers. Like, like some of them are literally kids who are just innocent, naive kids
Yeah.
that, you know, are kind of in over their head and have no idea what they're doing, you know, like
Hmm.
with Michael B. Jordan's character. You know, there are people like Idris Elba's character, Streeter Bell, who sees it less as a criminal enterprise and more just as sort of a business. Of course, there's D'Angelo, who is a fantastic character.
He has such a good heart, but this is what he knows.
Yeah, and kind of stuck in that situation, but it's not just a simple like heel face turn for him. Don't spoil anything. I was only able to see the first season.
Oh, thank you, because I was about to ruin some stuff for you.
Okay. But yeah, like every character has a shade of gray, and like, you know, nowadays it's so mainstream, you know, especially after what happened with George Floyd, to talk about
Mhm.
corruption in the police force, but you know, this show was shining a light on it.
Yeah, David was a beat reporter for the Baltimore Sun for 10 plus years. I think it might have been 12 years. And so he is like knows Baltimore, you know, inside and out, and especially at all different levels. And to your point, the shades of gray, one of the things that he talks about, I've read so many numerous interviews, and he really was successful in the show, is to show people who are impacted and constrained by environment. You know, as you said, the kids are good kids, but they don't have any money. They don't have any opportunities. They live in the projects. So what else are you going to do? You know, and if that's the images or the examples that you're seeing of success or how to get ahead, then that becomes your structure for principles, for morality, and for work ethic. You know, there's a great scene. You mentioned Michael B. Jordan. There was a great scene. You know, he and his little brother are living in a house that obviously is abandoned, and it's just the two of them. And the little brother, he's trying to get him up and get him ready for school. So even in the midst of all this, they still got to go to school. And the little brother hadn't done his homework. And Michael was like, why you didn't do your homework, man? And he was like, cuz I didn't get it. And it was math. And so Michael looks at him and then explains to him the math problem in terms of drug dealing. And the little brother gets it. Boom, rattles off the answer, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, so why couldn't you do that? You know, why didn't you do that with your homework? And the little brother says, because you don't get beat down if you get the answer wrong in class. So there's this environmental and social structure that makes total sense for these people, but would be totally different from them if they lived in Gaithersburg, or if they lived in you know, Capitol Hill in DC, or if they lived in Brentwood. There are ideas of how to live and how to socialize would be totally similar, quite similar, but the reasonings for it would be different. And David does such an amazing job of dramatizing that and making you, forcing you to look at characters and go, I understand that. I empathize with that. Not sympathize, but I empathize with that. I feel it, because I've had those moments, you know, where I could have done XYZ to someone, but I lived in a good neighborhood, or I was raised that was wrong, or what have you, instead of, no, that's how you handle a situation. That's what you do and what you don't do, sorts of things. Such an amazing thing to see and be a part of, especially on television, and at that time of television, where everything was just Law and Order, the show Law and Order, where it was just good guys, bad guys, and you sprinkle in a little bit of alcoholism to give character depth. You know, it's really, really great stuff.
Yeah, but back to Michael B, Idris, and of course Michael K. Williams, who was
Mhm.
also on the show. Did you ever get to meet any of them? Because I'm sure there are people who are going to wonder that.
I did. I did. I met Idris. Um, I didn't meet Michael. I didn't meet the two Michaels. I met Idris the days that I was filming. We were all on the same location. So we met and we had lunch all together, me, Idris, and Wood Harris. I actually spent more time with Wood, who played Avon. Uh, so at that time when that show aired, Wood was the more known actor. He had done more work out of New York, and nobody knew who Michael B. Jordan was. Nobody knew who Michael K. Williams was, or Idris, or whatever. But there was none of that, at least to my knowledge. There weren't issues of ego and I'm the star because I did 15 movies. It was just people who were like, yo, this project's dope, and we get to do dope projects with dope people. What could be better than that?
Yeah. Actually, I read that David Simon was looking more for unknowns and character actors than stars, which again makes it different from Law and Order, at least nowadays, where it's like Law and Order has a huge special guest star this week and this week. Like, what was it? Chevy Chase was like playing a Mel Gibson figure like 15, 20 years ago on an episode, for
Yeah.
like one example. But I was asking about Idris, not just because I'm sure people would have, been curious about that, but
Mhm.
also because, like, were there any rumblings, like, amongst people that he had a, like, star quality to him?
Well, if you ask my cousin, she was like, I always knew. Once you saw that first episode and he walked on screen, she was like, who is that? Um, but no, I mean, not more than any actor who is great, who's a great actor. You know, um, the thing that makes The Wire so interesting is it came on at a time when there weren't a lot of shows on the air with predominantly Black casts. You couple that with the show being filmed in Baltimore and not in New York or Los Angeles. So people weren't paying attention to it for that very surface reason. It's not an LA show. It's not a New York show. So I don't know anyone who's involved with it. So I don't care. And there was a high probability that it would have just gone by the wayside because it had people in it that no one knew. You mentioned Breaking Bad earlier.
Oh,
Um, you
yeah.
know, I was just going to say that Malcolm in the Middle was a hit show. So whether Brian was cast opposite Tight, he was still a known commodity. People would have tuned in just to see, oh my God, that's the quirky, crazy dad from Malcolm in the Middle. Now he's out here selling meth. But there wasn't really any of that with The Wire. No one knew who Dominic was. No one knew who the many of the cops were. Like you said, they were character actors, or they'd only done a couple of projects in New York. So when it came to moments where Idris or Michael B. Jordan exploded, you got to think Michael B. Jordan left The Wire and then went and did a soap opera in New York, which ironically the role was originally given to Chad Boseman. So if Chad hadn't turned that role down or left that part, Michael B. Jordan wouldn't have gotten the soap opera, and his fandom wouldn't have grown. And then, flash forward 10, 15 years, we have Killmonger. So it's just interesting to see that it's not a specific causality or one-to-one ratio that, oh my God, you were in this show and you were great, that you would be the mega star you are today. they continuously did good work, but dominoes fell in certain ways that they were able to move and do certain projects that elevated them. And they also are who they are. They made really smart choices at the same time.
Yeah. And, the same could be said about The Wire. Like, critics always loved The Wire, but ratings were never great when, it was on TV, despite the fact that it actually lasted for, like, I think 5, 6 years. Like,
5 seasons, yeah.
yeah, 5 seasons. Like, how did that feel? Like, how the show was getting these great reviews, yet it seemed like not many people were really tuning into it. I'll admit, like, I hadn't even heard of the show until, I don't know if you saw that Family Guy scene where Peter's watching TV and then they say, "Next up is The Wire." And then suddenly his eyes go big and he says, "Must watch The Wire."
I totally get that joke, though. I totally get that joke. When I moved to Los Angeles, it was 2004. And I started having meetings around town, and people were, "Oh my God, you were on The Wire?" And I was like, "Yes." And I'd start to talk about the show, and I could see their eyes glaze over. They hadn't watched it. They didn't see it. But everyone else is talking about it, so I should talk about it too. Again, versus a Breaking Bad, which had actors that people had either seen before and or loved. There's also a component to it that is uncomfortable to discuss, but it was a show with a predominantly Black cast at a time when it was very easy for people to dismiss a show on that merit. It sucks, but there's a reason why people loved Friends, and Living Single was Friends. And it literally was the show that the network went to the producers and said, "You see this show? Make this show, but with an all Caucasian cast." And we had Friends. And that's not to take away from Friends' greatness. They're amazing actors and it's a great show, but people who watched Living Single, great reviews. It's an iconic show, but people go, "Huh? I didn't know that's a thing. Queen Latifah had a hit sitcom." They were like, "What?" Same thing with The Wire, and it wasn't until probably season 3 going into season 4 that people said, "Oh my God, I have to check out this show. What is going on? I'm really missing out." And like you said, then it ran 5 seasons. It ran its course. It told the stories that it wanted to tell, all interwoven and connected, definitely not tied up in a neat bow. Once you finish it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah, you can have hurt feelings about it, but it's if you're really about your work and about the craft, when people who know, people who watch it give you that not just adoration, but that response, you're doing something good. And that's what you hang your hat on, that I'm doing something that makes me happy, that people are reflected well. I'm getting paid well for it. Let's not discount that. I'm working. The other stuff is more about the ego, and it's very difficult to try and disconnect yourself from that. But it's like underground music. If you got that group or that act that you follow and people don't know yet, it's like a nice little secret that you go, "You know what? Y'all don't know, but you will." And then next thing you know, everybody's talking about the Roots. Everybody's talking about Adele. Everybody's talking about Cardi B. I mean, that's how those things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is very true. So I guess that goes to my next question. which you pretty much kind of partly already answered,
Mhm.
I guess there were no surprises then when it seems like the show really got famous, once it ended or was about to end. And arguably, it's gone more popular since it ended.
Mhm. Um, I think that is a testament to the cast and David Simon, like on the same level, because there are a lot of things that become cult classic projects. They bombed when they were in the theater or they didn't get good ratings, but once they are on Netflix or some platform where you can binge them, you enjoy them for what they are, not necessarily because it's great. You're just like, oh man, there's a cool thing to put on and watch. People watch The Wire now and actually lament that they didn't watch it when it was on. And I'm not saying that just because I'm on it. I'm saying that interviews that I've read, they teach classes in colleges around the country on The Wire, and it's social, social economic impact or the implications of the themes and the ideas that the show tackles and presents. That's not just popcorn fare that it's like, oh, it's like Blade Runner or, projects like that where people after the fact start examining it and go, wow, why didn't this blow up when it first came on? There are a whole lot of mitigating factors. Sometimes something comes out and there are three other competing projects that are more popcorn or have people that are more recognizable. So that's where people's eyeballs go first, And to David Simon's testament, or to his credit, they didn't fold to, like you said, oh my God, we got to get Chevy Chase. We got to add a cute kid on the show so people watch. They were like, no, we stay the course. And as the show goes on, more and more character actors are on the show so that you inhabit you live with the characters they inhabit versus watching the show with their celebrity. That also allows much more freedom of storytelling. Because if you get Chevy Chase on the show, you can't just kill him off in the second episode because the story demands it. He's going to say, no, I need to be around for at least 6 episodes before you kill me. Well, sometimes on shows like this, people die or they go to jail or bad things happen to them because of decisions that were and plot points that were set up last season, 2 seasons before last. That's another thing that The Wire is good at. Stuff happens to characters seasons 3 and 4 that they did in episode 2 of the first season. Not to spoiler for you, but it's such a great tenet to David Simon's writing and the acting of that show. And they also added more actors who were actually from that area. Certain actors on the show popped up who were the real characters that some of the actors are playing. They were the real person, and then they got to show up on the show. So it's just, you couldn't do that if it was all about, let me hire somebody who had a #1 box office film last week. You just couldn't do that.
Yeah. And I guess one last question is,
Only one?
Yeah. So one last question is,
Mm-hmm.
Even though not only, did the stars of The Wire's star rise after, the show ended, but what impact do you think it had on you and your career and just your life in general?
Wow, that's a big question. Simply put, it gave me legitimacy at the beginning of my career that when I said I was an actor and I told folks, asked me what I had done, and I said The Wire, they went, "Oh, you're for real." It wasn't just you were on a show that was popular. You know, you were on a show that you can't be on that show and be bad, you know, be a bad actor. It demands that you be serious about your craft and be serious about working in environments that can be unglamorous. You know, sometimes a lot of Hollywood is about, oh, I want to do this project because it makes me look great. I get to have the best hairdo, I get the best makeup, I get to wear amazing clothes, I get to drive really hot cars.
Yep. Just look
There's
at
moments for that.
Yeah, just look at most Oscar-nominated films nowadays.
It happens. It does happen. This was a show that was about honesty and truth of regular people's experiences, you know. And if you watch anything that David Simon has written, they all have that through line. Generation Kill, which was based off of the novel, the first Iraq War or the second Iraq War. The Corner, which is based off a novel of people's real experiences in the drug addicted, infested areas of Baltimore. Show Me a Hero, which was about I can't remember his name, but he ran for office in New Jersey. Just regular people getting into these circumstances where these environments and these social constructs oftentimes are bigger than them, and they get caught up in it and they get lost in it. Versus, yo, man, you see me driving that Lambo, you see me next to Charlize Theron. Don't get me wrong, I would love to stand next to Charlize Theron on a show, but that's its own kind of project, and The Wire and shows like that are its own kind of project. And it also was one of the first 3 projects I did as a professional actor. You know, I just said I'd gotten out of grad school or an undergrad, and I was getting ready to go back to grad school to get my MFA. So I was able to go into a graduate program with real professional work that I could build upon, versus, oh, I just went into grad school cold and I didn't know anything about the practical application of what I was going to learn. I reverse engineered it, but I went back to grad school and I went, oh, so when I go back to work again, this is what that means and how that is applied and what have you. It also helped me springboard from a smaller market to a larger market. I moved from the DC Baltimore area to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is LA, it's Hollywood, it's ground zero for entertainment. And at that time, there were 200,000 members of the Screen Actors Guild that were members, not just actors in general. There are probably hundreds of thousands, if not, a couple million people in the Los Angeles area who were like, I'm acting. That's a hellified rat race and competition. And I could walk in and with not just credits and actual tape, but top shows, HBO, Homicide, I'm working with Andre Brower and Kyle Secor, those sorts of things, professional experience in casting and being in a casting situation. We asked that question earlier, what was that experience like? That's a predominant of what you do in Los Angeles and New York is the casting, having 4 auditions in a day. How do you deal with that? That's extreme. But sometimes you do get 2 or 3 auditions in a day. Personally, it gave me validation that I could do this. It wasn't just a passing lark, it wasn't a hobby. It wasn't somebody seeing me in the mall and going, hey, you got a face for, you could be on television. Oh, man, maybe I could do it. No, I can do it. And I can do it at a high level, which I used to play football. I played football for 10 years. And one of the things I learned in football is dedication and work ethic, which is connected to your belief that I can do this thing. A lot of times trumps natural skill. There's a lot of skilled people out there, but if they're not studying, if they're not taking classes, if they're not working on their own to get their mind, body, and spirit right, there's a high probability that you will not succeed just because you think you can do it. You have to do it. Or as we used to say, don't talk about it, be about it. Do the work, do the business of your work, and you'll have success.
Okay. That is some really great advice. And I think that terrific advice is where we can end things. But thank you so much, Jarvis, for coming onto the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, man. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Before we go, do you have anything to plug?
Um, not specifically, except I'm working on some projects with my brother. We're actually in the midst of producing a couple television shows. My brother is Jason George. He's on Station 19 and Grey's Anatomy and all that stuff. And we're having a lot of fun, and look out for the projects that we're putting out. And if you guys want to follow me, I'm at JWG Actor on Twitter and Instagram. That's pretty much where I live these days. I freely admit I'm too lazy to make videos for TikTok, so I'm not on TikTok, but Instagram and Twitter, where you guys can get at me and see what I'm up to.
Okay. Well, sorry. Yeah. Well, everyone, that was I Help Make That, and I'll see you all later. Bye now.
Peace.